Coming up on Mountain News this morning, as rain continues to fall in the Cumberland Valley, officials are keeping an eye on rising water levels.
And in Floyd County, people living in one city came together to voice concerns over what they are calling a lack of communication from city officials.
Plus, in Frankfort, we talked with Governor Andy Beshear about his priorities and message to lawmakers as they craft their own versions of a 2-year spending plan.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News This Morning.
Good morning. It is 6:03. I'm Will Puckett.
And I'm Madison Pergram.
Thank you for tuning into Mountain News This Morning on this Friday Eve. And Madison, it's a wet one.
It is a wet one. It continues to fall. Just continues to fall.
It just doesn't stop. And Madison, you'll quickly learn this is beginning to be what February is like around these parts. Let's bring Brandon in this morning. And Brandon, Madison doesn't know it yet, but it was 2 years ago. It was down in the Cumberland Valley. Last February, it was up north in the Big Sandy.
Right.
And now it's returning back to the Cumberland Valley.
Exactly. And unfortunate, they have a lot of flooding down in the Cumberland Valley, and they're seeing more of that this morning. Bell County, one of the areas that a little bit harder hit that I've seen so far. Hannah Reynolds is out down there this morning and getting us some more video. We'll have some of that, I think, here in just a few minutes. But as we take a look at our current conditions, we are looking at those heavier rain bands starting to shift into parts of southwest Virginia and far eastern Kentucky. Still some heavier bands, though, down into Harlan and Bell counties, Whitley County, East Tennessee there, Claiborne and Campbell counties. But a lot of the action now moving to the east and to the, again, to the east, rather. We're seeing flood watch continue. It's extended, there you go, that's the word I'm looking for, until 1 o'clock this afternoon for southern and eastern Kentucky and then the surrounding counties and the surrounding states there. Flood watches and flash flood watches that go to 1 a.m. tonight. Visibility is rough. Everybody mostly below 5 miles, a couple of spots above, but again, that doesn't matter because the roads are wet. There's ponding water. There could even be water over the roads, and temperatures will continue to fall throughout the day. We're basically where we're going to be topped out for our high today, and by the time we get toward tonight, well, things get a little bit more on the wintry side. 59 today, heavy rain at times. Be careful out there if you're traveling early this morning. Will?
All righty, Brandon, thank you. Well, as the Cumberland Valley continues to be hit by rounds of pouring rain, there is worry that major flooding could return to the mountains, especially with the flood watch and warnings that are in effect.
WYMT's Connor James was in Bell County earlier where crews are preparing for the most severe scenario.
The floodgates guarding the city of Pineville remain open as the threat of flooding and the water rises.
Yeah, so we're predicted to come close to flood stage. And so I've been out this morning just checking to see where the local creeks and streams are.
Ben Barnett is Bell County's emergency management director. It's not the city of Pineville he's worried about at the moment. The places that see flooding first are where his attention is now focused.
Those low-lying areas that get flooded by the river and by their creeks, especially when the river backs up, those will definitely be a concern, and I'd say a lot of those areas will get water.
For the low-lying areas to see flooding, water levels have to begin to exceed about 20 feet above the Cumberland River's normal levels. On a good day, this river typically sits at 970 feet. Let's use this field in Bell County, for example, that's across from the Cumberland River. 20 to 30 feet would definitely cause some flooding, but 2 years ago, nearly 50 feet of water flooded the Cumberland River. This shelter you see behind me, you could really only see the roof. Essentially, this entire field was completely underwater. This is video of that day back in 2018. Water levels then hit nearly 1,020 feet.
So, you know, if we get on the higher end of what they're predicting, then we could have some flood issues.
What worries Barnett is that the ground is already saturated, meaning the water is puddling on the surface and the river is already above normal levels.
It seems to be flowing. It's actually higher than I anticipated it would be. You know, and you don't want to start out a big rain already a little bit high. So that's a little bit concerning.
And with more rainfall anticipated, there's a renewed focus on those water levels. In Bell County, Connor James, WYMT Mountain News.
The city of Pineville did just check the floodgates last week and are ready to use them if it comes to that.
Well, last night, the city of Martin came together to voice their frustrations. This was prompted by a water line break last week, leaving them without water for days with no warning. Many concerns were about the Martin Revitalization Project, a project lifting the town from the floodplain. The Army Corps of Engineers is in charge of the project, and they were in attendance to answer questions.
We have the funding that we need to complete the project.
I'm not blaming you all. I don't know how many times money's been in here to fix this place, and we're right back to square one.
The meeting ended with the project manager saying he plans to hold office hours so people can come to him with more questions.
And heart disease is a leading cause of death in the United States, taking more than 600,000 lives per year.
February is American Heart Month, a time to focus on heart health strategies to reduce the risk of heart disease.
WYMT's Lacey Roberts talked with a doctor about how you can improve your heart health.
There are many different factors that lead to heart disease.
Obesity, from high blood pressure, from diabetes, from smoking. Not exercising.
But typically when you think of diabetes, you think of high blood pressure.
Over time, that high blood sugar in the bloodstream damages the arteries. And of course, one of the smallest arteries, and the arteries that are most important to us, are the arteries that go to our heart.
The blocking of these arteries is what leads to heart attacks and congestive heart failure. And there are ways to prevent that from happening.
Eating a diet with few carbohydrates, exercising 30 minutes a day.
Whether it be walking or running, those activities help process the sugar in your body, leading to lower blood pressure. Doing these activities is not what Dr. Duth says leads to success, but screening in other areas.
We have you speak to a counselor to screen for depression.
With chronic diseases that patients fight over time, depression can start to set in.
If we don't treat the depression, then you don't have the motivation to eat well, exercise, control your blood sugar.
Here at the Diabetes Clinic, they believe having a healthy heart starts from the outside in. In Hazard, Lacey Roberts, WYMT Mountain News.
Now, women are less likely to experience symptoms such as chest pain, shortness of breath, dizziness, and sweating. If you are unsure about your symptoms, the best thing to do is see your doctor as soon as possible.
It is a prevalent problem in the mouths of many Kentuckians, oral cancer. A $1 million grant through the United Health Foundation is trying to change that. In 2018, the project was created with the goal of serving people in Harlan, Letcher, and Pike counties. Our Steve Hensley sat down recently with officials for UK College of Dentistry who say there is one group they are targeting specifically.
We're hoping with this grant, we're doing work in schools and in colleges, and we're really hoping to get the message out about tobacco, and people know about the dangers of tobacco, but we really want to try to create some champions.
Through the project, they have hosted many screenings for people to participate in. For more information on the project and oral cancer, tune into Issues and Answers Monday at 7 right here on WYMT.
And a big step to economic development for Harlan County. State officials granted them certification for their Build Ready site in Cumberland. Last spring, they broke ground on the project, and this is a picture of what it looks like now. Judge Executive Dan Mosley says the area can house a facility of 50 to 100,000 square feet. State officials will help them promote the site.
A former Whitesburg restaurant is moving to Hazard. Prime 606 will be opening today at the Hazard Country Club. The restaurant will feature fresh steaks, hamburgers, sandwiches, and much more. The owner told us he feels the country club and the restaurant can both benefit from this new partnership. The steakhouse will open at 4 this afternoon and will be open to the public.
And keep education first. That's Governor Andy Beshear's message to lawmakers as they begin to craft their own versions of a $23 billion two-year spending plan.
Yesterday, the governor sat down with WYMT's Phil Pendleton to talk about his priorities and reaction to lawmakers' early comments about his budget.
Governor Andy Beshear says in every metric what he proposed is a more responsible and balanced spending plan than other recent budgets passed.
For the first time in 14 years, we don't have to make any more painful cuts to services that people desperately need.
Lawmakers have said they like some of the budget, such as funding pensions, but question other aspects, such as using tobacco taxes or sports betting items yet to be approved to raise some revenue.
And just about every one of the proposals we made come from a bill filed by someone in the Republican majority.
Including sports betting by Republican Adam Koenig. It hasn't been approved yet, but Beshear believes it will.
It is more than time for sports betting. And when we do it, when we can regulate this activity, we make sure that people don't go too far.
He says he knows the House and Senate will make changes, but he says it needs to stay focused on education.
And when we look at wanting to be better than we are right now, to get out of being ranked 40th in this or that, the key is public education.
Beshear says his budget is also focused on education, but says there will be news regarding economic development.
We are the third poorest state in the country in terms of per capita income. What do people actually make that they can raise their families with? You want to know about states that have the highest per capita income? In other words, the jobs with the best wages? They're the best educated states, too.
Some lawmakers have questioned why his budget does not include more across-the-board raises. He says he's focused on teachers because of the critical shortage there. In Frankfort, Phil Pendleton, WYMT Mountain News.
Now, legislative leaders have already said they will likely have to form a compromise conference committee to iron out differences in the upcoming House and Senate versions of the budget.
Rain continues to fall and heavy across parts of the area, but the heaviest bands of rain are now starting to shift to the east a little bit. Let's take a look at live pinpoint Doppler radar. We're seeing again parts of the Big Sandy now seeing some of that heavier bands of rain, but it's still ongoing down into parts of the Cumberland Valley, which has been heavily affected this morning, but going into a little closer there between Pikeville and Dorton, over toward Jenkins and Whitesburg, down toward Lynch and Harlan County, over to Norton, up toward Clintwood, and over toward some areas over there and Dickinson and Buchanan counties there. Seeing Prater there. We're seeing lots and lots and lots of rain. Most of it in parts of Floyd County too, also Knott County. So just be very careful this morning. Visibility is rough in areas where they're seeing dense fog and heavy rain. Anything less than 5 miles is bad. Flood watches continue for eastern and southern Kentucky to this afternoon, for parts of the other states until tonight. And then temperatures will continue to fall today in the 50s right now in most of the area, but 30s and 40s in some other locations. High water issues ongoing. Rain will transition over to snow tonight and more snow on the way as we wrap up the work and school week. Will?
All righty, Brandon, thank you. And thank you for joining us right here on Mountain News this morning.
More news is on the way. Coming up, the historic impeachment trial is finished and the results were what was expected, but some votes shook up party lines.
And after the problems caused by a misbehaving app in the Iowa caucuses earlier this week, at least one other state has opted out of the new system.